What up, Dodgers Nation? D-Mac here. And also, what up, Mets Nation? Welcome in, Mets Nation. We got a Dodgers Nation, Mets Nation collaboration. I'm joined by my man Tyler, a.k.a. WardyNYM, and we're going to break down the entire Dodgers-Mets series. But first, we got to give a shout-out to our friends over at Wager Lab, the new up-and-coming social betting app. What makes this app so unique is that it's legal for everyone. It's legal in every state. You bet with the virtual currency. It's risk-free, and you don't need any cash or money to play. I love this thing, Tyler.
Yeah, as do I. And, as many of you that have been watching on WardyNYM, we've had this great sponsor in my previous series collab, that being with Born at Hogwatch, and you guys know over in Padres Nation. And what's so great about them is that it's peer-to-peer betting and it's free. You do not have to spend a dime to play. It is legal in every single state out there. So it's very different, very unique. And what I love most about this is that myself and D-Mac over here, we can basically play against each other. So, for instance, game one of this series is tomorrow night, Friday, and I'm going to be hammering the Mets money line. I send that over to D-Mac, and he's going to be automatically having to hammer the Dodgers money line. So if I say take over on runs, he automatically has to take under on runs. So there's just a lot of great different elements about this. And the best part of it all is that we are also doing, specifically for Dodgers fans, I'm sorry Mets fans out there, but for Dodgers fans, we are doing a hat giveaway. And how do you enter that hat giveaway? All you have to do is by making sure that you're signing up. And again, all you got to do is scan the QR code that you see watching here in the show, or clicking the link in the description, and you'll be automatically entered. So make sure that you enter today. Again, Wager Lab, great sponsors here on our respective channel. It is free to play, and we have so much fun, and we cannot wait to see how we're going to do with this peer-to-peer betting throughout this key pivotal matchup to start the second half between the Dodgers and the Mets. But yeah, no, D-Mac, thank you so much for being here. Always admired your work. Many of you Mets fans out there, I'm sure, know who D-Mac is at Dodgers Nation, the biggest Dodgers YouTube channel out there. And together, we're going to be breaking down the series that is going to be between these two clubs. So start off with you, D-Mac. How are you feeling heading into the second half this season with this Dodgers team?
I'm definitely feeling optimistic. I mean, you talk about this Dodgers team that has had some struggles. They dealt with some injuries. There was a point in June where they lost 11 of 16 games, but they finished strong heading to the break, going 12-5 since that stretch. You're talking about a team that's getting healthier. You're talking about an offense that from top to bottom, the big chunk there at the top with Mookie and Freddie and Will Smith, JD Martinez, he was a fantastic sign by this Dodger team. They have definitely carried this team, but I'm looking for some consistency out of the starting rotation and bullpen. They still haven't proven that they've looked anywhere near this Dodgers team as far as pitching in the past.
It's funny you mentioned consistency. You look at this Dodgers team, and granted, it's not the Dodgers team that you usually expect. 101 team plus just last year. This year, they're a little above 500. I believe they're 51-38 this season, if I'm not mistaken, versus a Mets team. What is consistency, right? I mean, they're currently 42-48 on the season, 5 games below 500, and we're just trying to find something. They had a 6-game win streak that got snapped in San Diego. I don't know if it was because of me being a bad luck charm in attendance for 2 of those games, 1-1 lost one. However, what I do know is that this Mets team, they need help in all fronts, whether it's the home run ball, in which they probably still lead the NL or are close to, and giving up bombs this year. Their rotation has been anything but consistent. Their bullpen has been anything but deep, and their offense has been at times Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, as much as I love Tommy Pham, when he's basically leading the club in slugging, that there might be an issue. So, to say the least, everything has been consistently inconsistent. So, going back to you, D-Mac, as we head into this 3-game matchup, specifically, what are you looking for? What are your expectations, especially when we look at the pitching matchups that we have?
Well, first and foremost, Julio Urias has not looked like the guy that was primed to set himself up for a big payday, a guy that finished third in the NL Cy Young voting, a guy that really established himself as an ace. I dubbed him the Urias with the Dodgers, but he hasn't been that this season. You're only talking about 6 quality starts so far, an ERA close to 5, 63 strikeouts in 64 1/3 innings. He just hasn't been the same guy we've seen in the past. As far as the command, he's missing out of the plate. He had an inning where he gave up 4 runs. It was the first time that happened for 4 home runs. That was the first time that happened for a Dodger pitcher since 1954. So this isn't the Julio Urias that we know and love, but the good thing is he's coming off a really solid start against the Pittsburgh Pirates. He's back from the IL. He was dealing with a hamstring injury. So that really is first and foremost. They need a frontline guy to step up because Clayton Kershaw, he's been fantastic. He's been magnificent. He's been vintage Kersh, but he's also on the injured list. There is a small chance he could get activated for this series against the Mets. Most likely that won't be the case, but you need more guys to step up. And just kind of going back back to what we were talking about earlier with the pitching. This is just not the pitching that we're used to in Los Angeles. If you go back to 1958, the Dodgers have the lowest ERA in all of Major League Baseball. This year, their starting rotation is 20th. Their bullpen is 23rd. Their starting rotation, we look at innings pitches, 23rd. Look, we're used to sunshine, traffic, and pitching being great for the Dodgers. This year, it's nothing like that at all. It's like it's almost if there's no traffic, it was raining every day here in Los Angeles. It just doesn't feel right here in LA with this kind of pitching.
Yeah, and true Mets fans can certainly relate in that regard. You know, we've seen some dominant rotations. Pitching is usually what has carried this team, especially in my young lifetime as a fan. And heading into this season, I mean, the Mets had a lot of turmoil in their rotation. You know, they lost Chris Bassett. They lost Taijuan Walker. They lost who is now a starter with the Padres and Seth Lugo, a swingman and Trevor Williams. What do all these guys have in common last year? They were key factors in eating innings and doing a very strong job of it for the most part. So they bring in Kodai Senga, who was an all-star, which we're very happy about. He has been a revelation in his first year in the bigs. But then you bring in Justin Verlander to fill in for Jacob deGrom, in which Jake, of course, is out with Tommy John, so the Mets haven't really lost anything there. However, the Mets are paying over $40 million a year on a short term for Justin Verlander in Game 1 against Urias, who has not been the JV that we were hoping to get for the most part. He currently has a 3.6 ERA, a 3-4 record this year after missing the first month of the season. And the biggest thing with JV, and this goes directly in hand with former Dodger and current Met now and Max Scherzer, is these guys just struggle to give up the home run ball. It has been evident. I mean, JV, in comparison to the amount of bombs he had in his Cy Young award-winning season with the Astros last year, he's already close to, if not matched that from last year. Max Scherzer, the same applies. Max has quite literally been more of a shell of what we're expected to see on every fifth-day basis. So not only with JB, but with Max, you know, these guys are supposed to headline this rotation, be our two horsemen, the two-headed monster, if you will. And Kodai Senga is leading the way as our best starter, in which at this rate, he may in fact pitch Saturday. It's not confirmed yet, but he didn't pitch in the All-Star game, I don't believe. So he should be available this weekend for Game 2, that 3-game set, in which I'll be in attendance. So I'll be having a live look to see how these two teams play in Queens. But yeah, pitching-wise, as Mets fans can certainly relate. I guess the difference is you don't have these guys necessarily on the big bucks short-term the way that the Mets do. They took that risk with two 40-year-olds, and now they're paying the price for it, no pun intended. And you look at Urias, for example. This is his contract year, correct?
Yes.
So, I mean, if there's any benefit of it, this could benefit the Dodgers in their pursuit of potentially bringing him back come the offseason. Not that you want to see, you know, a southpaw who's been dominant since he first came up with the Dodgers being consistent, but if it's going to happen at any time, you know, it definitely doesn't hurt that front office knowing that's happening in the year that he is expected to be getting paid the big bucks by time he hits free agency.
So, yeah, Tyler, I mean, he is going to be a free agent at the end of the season. Julio Urias is a guy that he's been around for a very long time. He was the top pitching prospect in all of Major League Baseball. To me, he's almost like the Bryce Harper, Manny Machado when it comes to pitchers, as far as he's entering his free agency at such a young age that you have to give him the year. He's going to be 27 years of age, and we know that he's going to want a 9 or 10-year deal, and that's just something that this Dodgers team does not like to do. They don't like to give a lot of contracts out, especially of that length, especially to pitchers, and also there's a Scott Boras factor, the Thanos of MLB sports agents. And the Dodgers, they don't mix with Scott Boras. It's like orange juice and toothpaste. They just don't mix. So, yeah, it's definitely possible that, and you bring up a great point, that if he doesn't have a great year, you're probably talking about taking off $50 to $75 million of his potential contract. But I still think there's enough time for him to really get things right, have a really nice finish to the season, have a nice postseason, and set himself up for a really nice payday. I mean, I think the Padres, I think the Rangers could be after him, and I think all the Dodgers really put all their eggs in the Ohtani basket. So if they don't get Ohtani, I think they do prioritize Julio Urias, but that's a lot of money and a lot of years for a pitcher in the Dodgers that don't seem to do that. But one thing I want to ask you is, you talk about Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander. I dubbed them the Ace RP heading into the season. The early returns, of course, some injuries, some inconsistencies, but are you really ready to punt on some of those guys yet? Are you still waiting to see, okay, you still have more years down the line? There was a rumor that Max Scherzer was willing to end his no-trade clause to be traded. I mean, where are you at right now with Verlander and Scherzer?
It's so difficult to say because it's like, obviously us Mets fans would love nothing more than for these guys to really frontline this rotation consistently, be the guys, you know, they're not going to be the guys that we've even seen from JV last year. I don't think JV is going to be that Cy Young pitcher again. However, it would be great if we could just have consistency. I mean, that's really been the big thing. I mean, Justin Verlander for a good portion of the season was Jekyll and Hyde, like great start, bad start, great start, bad start. Like it was bang, bang, boom every single time. Scherzer has had his stretches this season of looking very, very sharp. When the slider's on, he is fantastic, but when it is off, he is hanging pitches left and right, just like how he did to Manny Machado, not once but twice, as Manny took him deep in that Padres series most recently. So yeah, where I'm at personally is, if the Mets do not get on this miraculous run, they just had their first 6-game win streak this season. They swept the D-backs, which was huge. They lose 2 out of 3 then to the Padres to enter the All-Star break. If they can get on more of those consistent runs by winning back-to-back series, or just winning series more often than not, and what is going to be a very tough schedule down the stretch for them, then that's where I can say, okay, I'm willing to see how these guys do, because also keep in mind that trading these guys is easier said than done. Now, to people that think that's impossible, it is certainly not. Steve Cohen has shown a willingness to eat that money. Steve Cohen will eat even upwards of $20+ million a year for a couple years if it means that they're off the team and he can better the team right away. And that is one luxury that us Mets fans have that a lot of other owners and teams in baseball simply can't relate to. I mean, the Mets, if there's one thing that they can control, it's their financial flexibility, regardless of the tax. And yes, I know it may look bad, but again, this is a risk that they took by signing these guys. JV on the short term was the best replacement out there in the free agent market for Jacob deGrom. And right now, he hasn't been the worst thing in the world. However, is not going to live up to that $43 million a year for a multi-year deal. Max Scherzer, the same applies. I mean, again, when Max is on, he looks great. I know that as a Dodgers fan, you had that little taste of him, and you saw his brilliance at times, too, down the stretch a couple years ago in the season before he, of course, had his ailments. But the point still stands. If the Mets do not really get on this run that us fans hope for, then by all means, I'm all ears. If I'm the Mets, I'm trying everything possible to get some type of return. You eat half their contract, especially Scherzer. He can opt into one more year of his deal, but then that's it. Max is a guy that I actually do think has potential of being dealt if he can get himself acclimated and going, because if he doesn't, he's going to have a little trade value. He has a ERA over 4 right now still. He's been really struggling giving up the long ball and to locate that slider. Those are things that if he can rectify, and say even doing so, the Mets continued their downward spiral, then I'm all ears to do what is best for this Mets team for 2024 and beyond. I'm sure the front office feels the exact same way.
Yeah, and I'm not totally against the idea. We know, of course, how it ended with the Dodgers, but it started really, really solid. I mean, he was fantastic down the stretch, had a 1.98 ERA in 11 starts. The Dodgers won every single game when he was on the mound. And unfortunately, he had the dead arm in the NLCS, kind of made a little business decision there. And, of course, that arm came back to life when he signed that record deal with the Mets. But you mentioned the opt-out. You mentioned the flexibility of that contract. It does make some sense. And like I said, it's never about the money for the Dodgers. And as someone who has the richest owner in the sport right now, you can also relate to this. It's really about the years and kind of where you allocate that and kind of the years on the back end. So I don't think they would be totally against it. Now, one thing I also want to ask you about is one guy that has been really the biggest flop for the Dodgers this season. Thor has been a thud, okay? He's been Noah Syndergaard. Thor's not throwing the Thunderbolts anymore. He's been the Thor from Love and Thunder, the Thor from Endgame, not the Thor from Love and Thunder that we were hoping that we would get. And yeah, I mean, the fastball command, it was okay, but really it's the velocity. And he's a velocity-dependent pitcher, and he just hasn't had any type of success at ERA over 7. There is a possibility that he comes back, and at the very least is a little bit of an innings eater. Guy can go 4 or 5 innings of 3-4 run ball. But yeah, I mean, can we get the version of Thor that was with the Mets, was throwing 98, 100 miles per hour? I mean, can you at least give us that, Thor, please?
Yeah, it's crazy to see his downward spiral in recent years, and it's unfortunate because it goes in hand with the ailments he's had from TJ over the past couple years. But the reality is, with Noah Syndergaard, is when he first burst on the scene in the mid 2010s, he had a heater that simply no one could catch up to. It was before the game's time, if you will. There weren't many guys throwing consistently the heat that he is. And now what we've seen in recent years with Jacob deGrom, it's kind of crazy how they almost flip-flop, where Jake early on in his career was sitting low to mid-90s, but he just progressed drastically as he got older, versus Noah, who really peaked early, you could say. And then when he started to have those ailments, it just has been downward since then. I mean, I don't see him getting that fastball back at all. It's unfortunate because he has the body, he has the build. You would think that would naturally come back to him, but it hasn't. And for a Dodgers team, when I saw him sign with the Dodgers, I'm like, all right, if LA doesn't fix him, who's going to? Tampa's the only other option, right, when it comes to advanced analytics that can really fine-tune a guy's game. I think of Michael Wacha as a great example. Michael Wacha was with the Mets couple years ago, had his arsenal change completely when he went with Tampa, and now he's been a very solid, consistent middle to back end the rotation starter for a couple years now. Noah, if he's going to go anywhere in the bigs before his career ends, he needs to fine tune his game completely. I know the Dodgers have been messing with his, not only his release points, but his arsenal. Those are things that need to continue to be fine tuned. He needs to get movement, lots of life on his off speed pitches too, because if he doesn't do that, the heater's just a meatball. I mean, you've seen it plenty. It's unfortunate story for him, but for the Dodgers' sake, I don't see a future with him right now. Do you? Like, what could he be? Maybe a type of a swing man, if you will, in the pen, like at best. I don't know how to feel about Noah.
I mean, like you said, I mean, when he's off, when the command isn't there, when he's leaving out over the plate, it feels like almost an automatic home run. HR9 at close to 2. I was saying, hey, if Mookie Betts wants to win the home run derby, you just have Noah Syndergaard pitch to him, he would probably won that thing, right? But as far as his future with the Dodgers, I do think there is a small chance. I mean, look, this is something you have to know about this organization, Tyler, is that they can find guys off the scrap heap. They can find those reclamation projects, and they take all that rag and they squeeze every drop out of every single guy they get. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think for him, it's the fact that he just won't accept that he has to reinvent himself. I don't know if you saw a few months ago when he said that he would give up his unborn child.
Unbelievable that he said that, actually.
Back to the guy. That was a little creepy, wasn't it?
Just a lot, you know?
a little creepy, right? And kind of when I heard that, I was like, okay, it feels like the beginning of the end. But even on top of that, I mean, last year you saw the Dodgers. They had Tyler Anderson. He comes in. He finds his way on the all-star team as an alternate. He sets himself up with a nice $39 million payday with the Angels. You know that Noah Syndergaard, who said that, hey, everything the Dodgers touch turns to gold. Well, it hasn't been the case for him, at least as of yet. But also, I think the other part of this rotation, Julio's underperformed. Gonsolin's underperformed. They've also had to lean on some rookies more than they would have liked as early on this season. Now, Bobby Miller, the Dodgers' top pitching prospect, he came out of the gate strong. Was so fantastic. Good. A .78 ERA. Ice Bobby, just ice in his veins. He was fantastic. Has come down to earth of late. Also, you have Emmett Sheehan, who has probably the most explosive four-seam fastball in the Dodgers organization, the way it plays up in the zone. He's had his moments. They've gone to Gavin Stone, who was the minor league pitcher of the year last year, he's had a rocky go of it. He really has not realized that potential as of yet. So a lot of rookies that have pitched tons of innings, and the guys that did come back, I mean, even Julio Urias dealing with the hamstring injury, Gonsolin dealing with the ankle injury. You've gone to Michael Grove. You just haven't had that consistency with the starting rotation. And it's also leaked into this bullpen, where my bullpen right now with the Dodgers, kind of my take on that is, yeah, there's definitely some talented guys. There's no question about it. Evan Phillips, he's one of the better relievers in the league. He's an all-star caliber reliever. Just kind of going back to what we were talking about the Dodgers really maximizing guys and identifying talent. He had an ERA over 7 when they got him from the Tampa Bay Rays, and they turned him into one of the best relievers in the sport. But other than that, Brusdar Graterol's had his moments, but outside of those guys, tons of ups and downs. This bullpen, they've been very frustrating to watch this season. And I think one of the things when you look at this bullpen is you're not getting that swing and miss. You're not getting that ability to miss bats. Everyone says the pitcher's best friend is the double play ball. I always say the pitcher's best friend, especially from a bullpen guy, is to miss bats, and you're not seeing tons of that from this bullpen.
Yeah, I mean, us Mets fans feel the exact same way about our pen. If you're not David Robertson, you're basically nobody, is what it's felt this year. You know, after losing Edwin Diaz before the season even began, knowing how electric he is and how much of a sure guarantee of a save artist he is, to having to be relying on a David Robertson who has been an absolute huge revelation. I don't know where this Mets team would be when it comes to closing games if it wasn't for him this year, because he has continued to be absolutely fantastic, even at the age of 38, 39 now. But Adam Ottavino in his second year with the Mets has not been nearly as consistent. We've overworked him. Ottavino in back-to-back days is, a disaster just waiting to happen. And then from there, they just have a lot of, names that weren't even supposed to start the year in the bullpen, or, guys are trying to still find themselves. Just a lack of depth is certainly what the Mets have on their bullpen front, and that has been a huge frustration, because how this Mets season has went in a nutshell is when they've had the pitching, they haven't had the hitting. When they've had the hitting, they haven't had the pitching. The Mets have lost so many games this year when scoring 6 or more runs, like an unprecedented amount. Normally when you're a lock, when you're winning 9 out of 10 times, the Mets have dropped more games than I can even count on my hand at the moment. So pitching has certainly been an issue with them in that front, giving up the home run ball, as we mentioned. And, now I kind of want to pivot into just a little bit more on this series. Do you know who's pitching game 2 and game 3 for the Dodgers yet, or is that still to be determined?
So it's still to be determined. I was thinking about this morning. I mean, I think you probably might go with Bobby Miller, the aforementioned ace I was talking about. He's pitched very well, especially on the road. His first start against the Atlanta Braves, he made light work of that Braves lineup. He was fantastic. But I think you could see Bobby Miller. You could see Tony Gonsolin. But another name I think I would definitely keep in mind is the name I talked about is Emmett Sheehan. Now, Emmett Sheehan is a guy that was born in New York City. He grew up in Connecticut. He went to Boston College. Wouldn't it be cool to see him get his start against the Mets in the place where he was born? I think that'd be kind of cool. But really, one of those three guys, I mean, there's a chance you go with the bullpen game with Michael Grove, but really it's up in the air. And as far as the latest on Clayton Kershaw, the last that Dave told us is Doc said that he doesn't know. There's a chance he could be activated during the Mets series, but I just kind of my gut instinct, I just kind of going from the hip. I don't anticipate it. There is a chance. I mean, he could be feeling a lot better. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I certainly hope that doesn't happen. The last time that Kershaw pitched against the Mets this year, I mean, what win was that for him? That was a record-breaking win for him, wasn't it?
Yeah, so he got his 200th win.
Yeah, there you go. So that was a huge moment. He carved up that entire Mets lineup. They had nothing for him. That was just prime Kershaw at his best that we saw. So I hope we don't see him. However,
that was the picture of the year too.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, no, he had a
he was
phenomenal
fantastic.
start.
He went 7 strong, 9 punch outs, but yeah, definitely Kershaw's been on his game. So I don't anticipate that, but one name that will be back this series most likely is Chris Taylor. He's the Dodgers all-star in 2021, utility player. I call him the Chris Army knife. He's had his ups and downs this season, kind of a little bit below average when it comes to offensive production, but the news that he's going to be activated for that Friday series, so he'll be back for that series most likely.
Okay, noted. And I know for pitching, the Mets should have Kodai Senga for Saturday. That's the hope right now. And, you know, when he's on, he has so much swing and miss. He's had multiple 12K outings this year. I mean, just pure dominance. As long as he's not walking guys early, he's really carving guys up with his patent ghost fork or his heater that touches a 99 in the back pocket at any point in the ball game. He has truly been huge for us. And then Max Scherzer is, of course, there for what very well could be a rubber match on Sunday, depending on how games 1 and 2 go, in which I wish I had more confidence than what I do. If Max is a slider, then I'm feeling good. If he doesn't, then I'm feeling pretty bad. I think it'll be an early outing for him to get pulled from there. But before we get out of here, I want to ask you, on the offensive end, who are 3 batters that you're hoping to see have a strong series against the Mets, either because 1, they've been great all year, or 2, maybe they've been in a slump a little bit and you're hoping that they can snap out of things as we start the second half?
Well, really, the top of this lineup has been where they've done most of their damage, especially against right-handed pitching. Mookie Betts, he's MVP caliber. I mean, we're talking about a guy who entered the break with 26 home runs. He's on pace to hit 47 home runs. So hopefully he saves some home runs from the home run derby just for that second half. And you want to see him continue on that hot streak. I want to see him catch Ronald Acuna Jr. and win the MVP. I want to see him be the first guy to win an MVP in both leagues since Frank Robinson back in the day. So yeah, I want to see Mookie continue that hot streak. Also, Will Smith, he's a guy that makes his first all-star team. You want to see him continue his hot stretch. And, yeah, kind of down that lineup, David Peralta has been a 1-year, $6.5 million signing that first month of the season, he really struggled. He was coming off a back injury. A lot of people were saying this is a bust of a signing. This was an L for Andrew Friedman. Well, since the beginning of June, he's been one of the best hitters in Major League Baseball. So to see one of those guys outside of the Mookie Bettses, the Freddie Freemans, the Will Smiths, and the JD Martinez find a way to have some success, that's going to be big. I kind of will throw in one more guy in Max Muncy, because Max Muncy, he's been very inconsistent this season. Lots of high highs, but we've had some really low lows with Max Muncy. And he's one of those guys, I'm sure, I kind of want to ask you this. Who's the guy kind of on your team when right when they start slumping, you get the entire fan base goes after him. Then when they hit a few home runs, they become Homer Simpson going back into the hedge. For the Dodgers, that's Max Muncy.
For the Mets, honestly, given his contract, I have to go with Francisco Lindor. There's such a gap between you have a lot of the diehard fans, including myself, and you have fans that just haven't loved the move since it first happened, regardless of him having basically a 30 home run, 100 RBI season last year, regardless of him being beyond productive and having an elite 99 percentile outs above average defense since being a Met. I mean, for whatever reason, because he's a $300+ million man, if he's slumping, everyone everyone's ragging on him right away. And as soon as he gets out of the slump, and which he has over his past 30+ games since having his second child, he's been one of the best hitters in baseball, hitting over 300, 700+ slugging. I mean, the guy already has roughly 20 home runs and 60 RBIs, leading all shortstops in most categories, aside from batting average. And I think in today's game, you can understand that batting average only means so much, especially if you've been on a heater for as long as Lindor has, but I would probably go with him. And then, of course, you have Pete Alonso, who has had his fair share of struggles coming back from a wrist injury after taking a 97 heater from Charlie Borden, a couple months ago, and that hopefully snaps out of things as we get into the second half. The most underwhelming player the Mets have had this year offensively is the reigning batting champ, that being a Jeff McNeil. Jeff is a very emotional player. You will 100% hear him yell an F-bomb anytime he grounds out down to first. That's just how he is. Very emotional guy, and this year he has been way too pull happy. Again, love Jeff. Had the opportunity of actually attending his charity event not too long ago in New York. But the fact of the matter is that when he's off, it definitely hurts us a lot because they need that contact hanging cane. And McNeil at his best, he's hitting for the opposite field. But now that there's no shift, it seems like he's had less incentive to do so, to really hit that gap in the left side, which is not really there anymore. So him, along with some other batters I've seen, have not taken nearly enough of advantage of not having the shift anymore. It's like they don't know how to go oppo now because those openings aren't there, and that's something that needs to change. So McNeil is one of 3 batters I'm really looking at in the series. He needs to have a big second half, especially for the depth of this Mets line, but they want to go anywhere. Francisco Alvarez, a young 21-year-old phenom who has 17 home runs for the Mets already at the backstop position after not even starting the year for the first month plus. We only brought him up because Omar Narvaez was put on the IL for a good period of time, and Alvarez is the future of the back. He's easily the most productive offensive catcher the Mets have had since Mike Piazza. No pun, like that's exactly how it's been for them. So we're loving every second of El Troll, as we love to call him. That's his nickname. And then Francisco Lindor. I mean, he's been on an absolute heater. Hopefully that continues. But there's one more bat to mention, because I know we talked off air about this, because Dodgers fans may not want him. If the Mets do become a rental, do not sleep on Tommy Pham. He has absolutely been killing it for the Mets this year, and I cannot say enough good things about his offensive production. I mean, he basically leads the Mets in OPS, which is kind of crazy to say.
Yeah, no, I mean, Tommy Pham is the guy that I mentioned on my show last week. I took some heat from it because, like I said, he did slap Jock Peterson for a fantasy football league issue. But, I mean, hey, this is a guy who's produced. This is a guy who is raked against left-handed pitching. The slug is there. The consistency is there. Like you said, I think outfield defensively, he still passes. I think you're not going to make a trade for him for his defense. But, yeah, he's a very interesting name. And you mentioned David Robertson earlier. I would be more than fine with the package deal. Give me David Robertson. You think he's 38 years old. He's going to be a free agent after this season. I mean, if you're going to be a seller, that's going to be a guy you get a chip on. If you look at the Mets farm system towards the bottom of the league, actually, I saw today, they were actually dead last when it comes to organizations that have drafted players and that percentage of that player actually playing at the big league level. So, yeah, one thing I kind of want to ask you, too, is we look at this Mets organization as a whole, kind of from 30,000 feet above, and you look at this farm system. Yes, you have Stephen Cohen's money, right? This guy, he's got the deep pockets. You can throw it at a lot of established superstars, but don't you kind of want to see more of an organic buildup as far as getting into the roots of that farm system and kind of doing it kind of how the Dodgers did it? Whereas, yeah, if Mookie Betts available, you flip some chips for him, you trade some prospects, take some money in that 401k, get Mookie, sign him to a long-term deal, have the resources. If Freddie Freeman falls in your lap at 6 years, $162 million because the Braves don't want to pay him, fine, do that. But it's not like you go out there and spend frivolously on all kinds of players. You really develop from within. You get those prospects, and that's how you can have sustainable winning.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when Cohen first bought the team, his idea was to do it the Dodgers way. And that's why he's been throwing his money as much as he has. He wants the payroll to go down. It's really hard to make that happen while also being an immediate contender, or not even a contender this year, but kind of looking on last year and how the type of run that they had and being hopefully a consistent contender while keeping the farm intact. Mets' previous regime under the Wilpons did a fantastic job on partying with everyone and their mother in that farm system, and that's what we've been trying to build so heavily now in recent years under Cohen, to build back up and then hopefully have these guys prosper and be able to every year to call up certain guys and say, hey, this is going to be our, Brett Beatty's our third baseman now. Francisco Alvarez is our starting catcher. We have some other guys. Ryan Mauricio has been tearing the cover off the ball that can play left field, short, second base there, who we're really excited about. Mark Vientos has potential to be a huge power bat, potentially at the DH position. So the list goes on and on. The Mets are finally starting to have their young talent blossom, if you will, under Steve Cohen. But this is the first of many waves, and the most important wave is them getting sustainable pitching in their farm. That is what they lack heavily. They did really strong in this year's draft in helping add in that regard with some pieces that they got. They're top heavy when it comes to their pitching in their farm, and that's something that they need to build more and more of, which I'm excited to see them do. But yeah, to your point, I know it's really hard to find a fine line between being a consistent contender, buying a lot, while also keeping the farm intact, because naturally there will be opportunities that open up which will test you if you want to part with these pieces. And in hindsight, you not doing that, maybe the Cashman way with the Yanks, could hurt you in the end when you say you don't have the Andujars and the Fraziers of the world blossom the way that you hope that they would. But for the Mets here, it's about making sure that they find this fine line. If there's a guy out there that has multiple years of control that's worthy of a top prospect or two, then you absolutely consider it if it helps this team now and in their future. But for rentals especially, that's where you're really not going to see the Mets bite too much on. They've been very stubborn in that regard, and I believe that's the best way for them to pave their way for success, not only for 2024, but in the years going forward.
And that's why I was so proud of Stephen Cohen. I was so proud of the Mets for not signing Carlos Correa. I know they came so close. The medicals didn't turn out. This year, 94 weighted runs created plus, hitting 225, which isn't bad for a guy that only has one leg, apparently. But still, I mean, I think you dodged that bullet. You got to feel pretty good about that.
We do. Right now, we're feeling good. And as much as we would have loved Correa, just for the excitement, like, honestly, on paper, heading into the season, if we had Correa, we would feel like easily one of the best teams in baseball. But again, what's on paper versus what production is are two very different things, knowing what we've seen from Max and JV or lack thereof. I mean, honestly, that could have been a huge recipe for disaster. And you could even say that to a lesser extent with Jacob deGrom, already gained that multi-year deal with the Rangers, and now he's out for at least the next year and a half, 2 years with Tommy John. Again, I don't wish that on him. I feel it's so unfortunate what happened with him, but the point still stands. As elite as a player can be, making sure you make the proper decisions based on health is also vitally important. We can't let our emotions get too cooped up. I know I got mine because I was going bananas when it was initially happening, but for multiple teams to dodge that bullet, you'd have to imagine there's a valid reason as to why.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And any thoughts on Shohei Ohtani? Got at least, I mean, it's like, to me, it's the 6 degrees of Shohei Ohtani. I mean, you see the rumor with Buster Olney in the Mets this morning? I mean, in the Yankees.
if it's yeah, I was gonna say if it's the Mets and Buster, he's wrong. But if it's the Yanks, yes, I did see that. And Shohei isn't getting dealt this year. I'm going to come out flat and say I do not foresee it happening. If it does, then that Dodgers are certainly a team to look at in that regard, because if there's one team that I think would be smart on basically buying in as much assets as you're giving up to really ensure that you can have that extended time to potentially negotiate, give them the vibe of being with the Dodgers, then that makes sense for them. But, you know, Cashman's been stubborn. Why should I believe that the Yanks are going to go out and actually give up an entire haul for Shohei, who very well could not return after the second half of the season? I just don't foresee that happening at all. I think that's nonsense. However, I do think Shohei is going to be a huge discussion piece, and I think you and I are going to milk that thing for all that's left, every single last drop in the offseason. Us Mets fans, we know how Cohen feels. We know how Billy Epler feels, the man who brought Shohei into the States with the Angels to begin with, scouted him for a long period of time. We know how the Dodgers feel. We know how much Shohei loves being out west. I've been under the firm belief I do think that the Dodgers are the favorites to get Shohei this offseason, but I also think that Steve Cohen is going to be Steve Cohen and basically give him an offer that if he refuses, it'll be similar to Trevor Bauer. Because remember, the Mets gave Bauer more guaranteed money on that deal, but he decided to be in LA because, you know, he's from the area and he wants to enjoy the weather. And, you know, of course that fell flat on its face, but the point still stands. Just because you offer more money doesn't guarantee anything in making an actual decision.
You guys are dodging bullets like Neo in the Matrix, man.
Yeah,
I mean,
literally.
Yeah, I mean, look, you talk about Shohei Ohtani. I mean, I was talking to Angels Insider yesterday, and I was trying to pry him every which way to get anything I could from Shohei Ohtani. And he basically said, look, no one really knows anything about Shohei Ohtani. I mean, it's very rare to get any real substantial information about where he wants to go or where he wants to play. You hear the rumors, okay, he wants to be on the West Coast, but I think not enough people are talking about how big of a player Stephen Cohen is as far as setting the market. I mean, this is a guy can go out. I mean, he's $600 million there. You guys compete with that, right? If you're the Yankees, I don't know if you saw the jersey patch, the star that everyone's hating on it, their new jersey patch. I think it's funny how this trade rumor comes out a day after they announced they got that $25 million ad patch deal. But does he really want to be with the Yankees? I mean, does he really want to get booed the first time he doesn't go 5 for 5 and throws 12 strikeouts? The left, of course, the short porch definitely makes a lot of sense in right field. But yeah, I just don't know. I don't know if I see him in New York, but I also don't know if I see him a franchise trading away the farm, giving away everything. Yankees have to give away all their top prospects, the Empire State Building, MSG, everything, and then not have a guaranteed extension. I don't know if I see that. I think it would have to have a little wink handshake deal. Hey, we're going to trade away the farm for you. We're going to sign you long term.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be interesting to see because we're just, we're not even a month away now, away from the trade deadline, which is crazy how fast the season has been going. But as we get into the rumor mill in that final week and a half, 2 weeks, we'll be seeing what's happening. I think it's going to be a lot of talk, but it's going to lead to nothing personally. That's just my opinion. However, I did feel for a while that Juan Soto was not going to be dealt, and I was certainly proven wrong in that regard. So you never know when it comes to these things. All-star players, I mean, truly some of the best faces in the league are getting dealt at trade deadlines in recent years, so maybe Shohei will be that latest example. But before we get out of here, D-Mac, any final remarks you have on this series as a whole?
It's a big series for the Dodgers. It's a very, very big series for the Dodgers because, one, you got a lot of tough road games coming up. You go to the Mets, you got to face the Orioles, a lot of East Coast teams, and they really need to get themselves on the right track because, yeah, after everything that happened in the first half, they still ended up in first place, but I don't think that Diamondbacks team is going away. And I think that if you're this Dodgers team, you want to prove to this organization that they should be buyers, that they should add a starting pitcher or a bat or another bullpen piece. You have to have success early on in the second half for them to want to do that, or else maybe they look towards 2024 and the Shohei Ohtani that we're just talking about and say, okay, maybe we won't go all in this season. But I think that their play early in this second half is going to be very telling to how aggressive they're going to be at the deadline. As far as the Mets, the Dodgers, I always think that's just a great series. Two big fan bases, two marquee franchises. I love the Mets ballpark. I think the Mets are one of the great teams in Major League Baseball. So, yeah, I love having those guys get together. I got the Dodgers taking 2 out of 3. I think the bullpen is fresh. Like I said, this offense, second in home runs, second in walks, third in OPS, fourth in runs scored. Great when it comes to clutch hitting, great when it comes to 2 outs hitting. I think they're going to pick up where they left off before the break. And I think a lot of Dodger fans out there are saying, whoa, we don't want the All-Star break. We want to continue this hot streak. I said, we need to get this pitching staff a rest, and hopefully they'll be fully recharged and ready to go in this series. I got the Dodgers taking 2 out of 3 from the mighty Mets.
For the sake of just being optimistic, even though that I've been very pessimistic of this team as of late, I'm going to say the Mets take 2 out of 3, and I think as long as Kodai Senga pitches game 2, he is going to be a force in that regard, and hoping that between one of JV or Max that you get an outing that you're hoping for. Again, it's a coin flip on what you're getting from these guys every 5th day, but just holding out hope that the Mets can do the job, the offense can be there, and again, a Dodgers rotation where there is still uncertainty as to who's going to be pitching here, hopefully can play in the Mets' hand a little bit, but as I say that, there's still the same team where if you have a full bullpen game, they may only get a couple hits. Like, that's just been the story of their season, not only this year, but in recent years when facing pitching that they're not necessarily accustomed to. Either way, I'm really excited. I'll be attending game 2 of the series. Should be a sold-out crowd. It always is between these two teams. And, yeah, just really excited to get this thing going.
All right, so what are we going to do? We're going to do a bet. How about if the Dodgers win, when I'm in New York, you take me out for the best pizza. If the Mets win, I take you to the best tacos here in LA. Or how about this? I'll change my Twitter profile pic to Mr. Met. I mean, what are we going to do as far as bets?
Oh, that's a great question. I think
maybe I'll get the Mr. Met, but I'll Photoshop a Dodgers hat on it, and you have to have it as your profile pic.
Deal. Yeah, let's do that like a 24-hour thing. Whoever, if the Mets lose the series, I'll change my profile pic for 24 hours. I'll do exactly that. If the Mets win, then you just got to have the traditional Mr. Met. I think that's a great idea.
Hey, that could be good for me. I could blow up, get some more followers that way.
I think you will. I mean, Mets fans will appreciate you partaking. I know Dodgers fans will probably feel the same way on my end. So you got yourself a deal, my friend. But again, thank you so much to everyone that watched on Dodgers Nation here on WardyNYM. Make sure to subscribe, like, all that great stuff. Comment down below how are you feeling about this 3-game set between these two teams. Let us know your predictions for this series as well. And of course, one more time, shout out to Wager Lab, our great sponsor of this video. Make sure to click the link in the description down below for our respective channels, or just use your smartphone right now and scan that QR code. It is that easy to sign up. It's free to play, legal in all states. So what are you doing? Make sure you sign up. And D-Mac, was a pleasure, my friend.
This was so much fun, man. You kill it, Tyler, man. Love talking ball with you. Let's do this again sometime soon.